Okay, so Mara stock is pumping, and it's pumping for a good reason, not just for what's going on in the macro world with a lot of the Fed officials giving their opinions on rate cuts, but it's also reflecting that the fib extensions we talked about in the previous Mara video that has been recorded and uploaded a while ago. It's really been a while since I talked about this stock, but now it's about time we come back to it. So none of this has changed. I haven't touched the charts whatsoever, and now I'm gonna touch it again. It's been a very long time. That sounds funny, but yeah. So basically, the point I'm gonna try to make here in this video is that I'm gonna share my opinions. I'm gonna share my opinions on the chart itself. I'm gonna share my opinions on how the macro is influencing Mara, and as well how Bitcoin is influencing it. Now, I did add more to that Bitcoin BitU swing trade I even talked about in previous videos. I added in more today, just before the Fed officials gave their opinions and their views. Um, so pretty good timing, and I'm going to share what that position looks like now. Um, Next time I talk about Bitcoin, which will most likely be tomorrow or something like that, I'll show you guys a screenshot of it. But basically, Fed officials are saying that they see rate cuts super likely coming very soon. There's a ton of articles about this. It's all still very fresh, so you guys can pretty much go to any news media. This is the first one I picked out, and they're all going to say pretty much the same thing. But yeah, rate cuts for them are very, very likely. Now, the one that really matters is this man right here, Jerome Powell. He's the one that is really going to officially say what is going to happen and what the actual realistic views are. Um, so even though these officials are, their word is very important, his is much more important. And I know he is waiting on, because he talked about this in previous Fed meetings, FOMC meetings. He said that he wants to wait on CPI reports to get a much better understanding of what's going on. He wants to see if the previous tariffs um, have affected prices. He wants to see where inflation is really at before we can go ahead and start cutting rates. And also on top of that, it's like we recently, yesterday and today, I believe, there's been a lot of new tariffs that have been pushed out, and there's a lot more being pushed out. I think there's still a few more that uh, will be pushed out as well. But for the most part, the majority of the tariff impact, in my opinion, has, if it already happened, then we will see that in the next CPI report at the end of July, I believe. So it's very, very important to wait for those numbers before we make any overly optimistic trades and aggressive trades. So as of right now, though, if you guys remember in the video I made a while back on Mara, I did say that, you know, we have this macro environment where, you know, Fed cuts will eventually happen. It's working its way there, and Bitcoin holding such, you know, nice higher prices will eventually, you know, of course, reflect on Mara, you know, Q1, Q2, Q3, and so on. All of its quarterly reports will reflect this, and we can see a lot of that building up on their monthly reports as well. So I kept saying, like, you know, even though it's very, very possible that we can see lower prices on Mara, they're not something that, just in my opinion, a lot of investors should be shying away from. I do believe Mara has a lot of upside potential this year before the next, you know, bear cycle and the next Bitcoin halving event happens. And I kept saying in so many videos that Mara is spending a lot on making sure they're well prepared to take care of the next halving, because you know, it's gonna become very, very difficult to mine Bitcoin in the next halving event. So the ones that, just like Mara, that are preparing now and they're preparing early, and they didn't really have a whole lot of that Mara's handling. And you guys can, I mean, you guys can look up their numbers yourself, so you can make your own opinions on it. But basically, they're doing very, very well financially compared to other miners, and they are aggressively, you know, preparing for this next halving, which is going to be a very strong challenge for a lot of miners that um, aren't taking it too seriously and are preparing early. So this is going to be, I'm not saying this is going to pump their price like crazy, but I'm saying that it's going to keep them in business, and it's going to keep them, for the most part, attractive when it comes to growth potential. But in the short term, though, I mean, I do believe they're going to be much, much higher Later this year, I have some very, in my opinion, these are quite optimistic. This is my overall 20, by the end of 2025 at a minimum, I do believe they could reach $45. But more conservatively, and I kind of need to push all of these forward because it's been a while since I talked about these. But more conservatively, I do believe that $30 is very, very likely. We almost hit it. We were just about there, but I do believe we can break it soon enough this year. I mean, it's been a while since I talked about this, and we ended up overextending the fourth wave down, which is actually for the overall bigger picture. Um, Super aggressive fourth wave mainly due to macro fear. So this isn't structural based; it's more fear and emotion based. So it's up to you guys if you want to take this seriously or not, because technically breaking under the second, or actually, this is on its way down. So first, second, third wave up, overshooting fourth wave just because of a lot of macro emotions taking over investors' view. But now it looks like we can finally work our way higher to a fifth, which would be, again, conservatively between 30 and $40. Optimist or optim, my most optimist. I can't talk right now. Jeez. Super bullish case, $45 to $65, but this is more important right here. It's much more reasonable because they're going to be spending a lot more cash on buying more miners, and we got to somewhat factor that into the potential value of the stock throughout this year. But basically, let's talk about the short-term picture. We know that the RSI is very much overextending, but this isn't too important right now, mainly due to the announcements we've seen today on a lot of these articles. But basically, we finally hit this blue area that I've been talking about for a while. We ended up pushing back a little bit, and I kept saying, I believe I said this in the last video. I didn't look over it, but I kept saying that I wouldn't be surprised because we reached into this area, we broke out of it, we were holding above the 120 moving average. But I say this a lot, and I say this in Bitcoin too, is that a lot of these retracements and extension areas, seeing it briefly get hit and not even breaking the median extension or retracement, whichever one we're looking at in this case is retracement, not breaking the median it's given me a lot of confidence that soon enough, a lot of times we see what can be a bullish fake out before we retest this more aggressively, and that's exactly what we did. So a while back, this was, I don't remember when I did the last video, but it was either in May but basically at the start of June, we bottomed out in it, came up, couldn't break previous swing high, let the RSI overextend itself to the upside. We then finally came back down and actually hit the 0.5 retracement at $13.50 before the price started going higher again. So this basically makes this a lot more reasonable. It gives me a lot more confidence that this area and these price levels are filled and they're in the past now. We broke previous swing highs and now we're going higher. And now the purpose of this fib extension area that I've had here for a long time since the last video is to express realistic, and this is backed by a few things, but it's basically here to express realistic short-term resistances, which then after that we can just, we don't have to pay attention to the whole move from exactly the bottom, but we can pay attention to the most reasonable support that actually holds most valid, which at this point is right here. And basically what this allows us to do, and it's the same strategy I use for Bitcoin. It just works for me. I'm in no rush to think otherwise, because at the end of the day, the macroeconomic view sort of supports these structures that we're seeing. So I'm not going to get into it too much because I don't really believe there's a reason to. But basically, at this moment, we still have the opportunity to hit the 1.236 extension at $18 and between 75 and 80 cents. And we can see short-term weakness. Basically, this can look as simple as keeping an eye on smaller fib retracements, smaller extensions within a 5 to 15 minute, candle time frame, which I'm not going to get into because it will make this video super long. But basically, just keeping an eye on those and seeing how healthy the super short term view is. But at the end of the day, the bigger picture is what matters. A lot of short term noise isn't something I care to think about too much. But we're gonna, or at least I am going to keep following this price higher, so you can keep track of an overall retracement for this area right here. We saw this imbalance get filled super nicely, found support and pushed the price higher. So there's a lot of momentum to the bullish side right now. But at any point, even with a lot of optimism, we still see fluctuations within the price. Just like this one where it goes up a lot, fluctuates before it goes up higher. We can expect that to happen at any moment. But at the end of the day, the purpose of the support area is at any point as the price comes down, we want to see the price hold and not break below the 0.618 retracement, which it's going to change as the price continues to move. But it's reasonable because this, it overlaps with the 120 moving average. It allows the RSI to have enough room to rest without breaking any reasonable structures. And we'll keep following the price higher. And as the price continues to fluctuate, continues to go higher, and it fluctuates down for small corrections, we want to see that retracement continue to hold, whichever time we're looking at it. And I'm gonna keep doing that until the price eventually tops out at $20.67. But we can just say $20.50. That's a big area where I want to see the price continue to hold above the support as we continue to go up. And again, I'm going to keep moving this as the price tries to extend higher. But the point is that we don't want to see the price at any point break below the retracement until it tries to at least, reach this premium section, topping out at $20.50. But it starts at $19.50. So $19.50, $2.50, there's like a good solid $1 spread there, and that's where I'm seeing most of the resistance to be. But of course, this will also depend on what Bitcoin's doing. This area also overlaps with very, very important imbalances that were not tested as much as I would like them to see in the past. And this is fine because we can see this happen now in the near future. So this area, this premium section especially, overlaps with strong imbalance. We've seen these imbalances form and not retested for months, and it still holds valid. So there's a lot of resistance between 1950 and 2050, in my opinion. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but that's just something I'm keeping an eye on as the macro environment changes. And then eventually, as we test these areas, we want to keep an eye on a bigger picture retracement, which I will give you guys in a future video. And then at that point, that's just an overall, fluctuation factor in a lot of this short-term bullishness to allow the price to build up more bullish momentum in a very important support area to eventually push the price higher into our next conservative area, which can potentially break the price over $30. And I believe that's very, very reasonable. But until then, we're going to see massive fluctuations, a lot of fake outs. So that's why it's so important to understand how high we could potentially go in the short term. What are the signs that can give us signs that the bullish structures are going to break, at least in the short term, and how far down we can go, and so on. There's a lot of things to look at. But as of right now, if the price were to drop, I don't want to see it break below $15.40. It can easily hold above that. We got the 120 moving average above $15.40. And then again, we still have a bit more room, reasonable room to go higher. Within the smaller picture, there are small retracements that also overlap with this overall extension in blue. So I don't really need to look at it too much. Again, we got a solid one at like 1750, and then it's just something we want to keep an eye on to see how healthy the super short term micro picture is and going forward. And with Bitcoin, we kept holding. This is invalidated, so I'm actually going to remove this in the next Bitcoin video. So these were just estimates. We never reached them, and I kept stressing that. I kept making it super clear that these are just estimates. We never reached it, so these estimates will get removed. And now what I'm looking at is when I do the next Bitcoin video, I'm gonna see if there are any reasonable fib extensions that can be created within this structure that give us reasonable areas to look at to see how strong a potential test of this first green area that I believe there will be a lot of bullish momentum and push the price much higher. We got to keep an eye on that, and then I'm gonna keep an eye on smaller support areas within this move up to, you know, see how strong and how healthy this rally is, and if it's just gonna be a super short term fake out and like hype FOMO move. So that's something I wanna try to examine a bit more, and of course this can reflect in tomorrow quite a bit. So there's a lot of things to look forward to. There's a lot of question marks right now. It's pretty clear of what I'm paying attention to, but again, this is going to evolve very quickly. So I want to try to make more update videos tomorrow instead of waiting a long time to do so. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.